Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. What I want to talk about today, I want to talk about the NBA. I was having a conversation with my man Keon today on Twitter, and big shout out to Keon. And we were having a discussion, and we were talking about the NBA. And from that discussion, I was explaining to him, and it just really kind of pushed me toward this conversation. I know this, and I've known this for a while, but today's NBA, it ain't your daddy's NBA. And I know times change, people change, we all change, right? But it's been a drastic change. It has not been a change that has happened overnight, but it's been a change nonetheless. And, the conversation that I was having with Keon really kind of brought me to this discussion. I said, you know what, I might as well put this on the podcast. I guess I should start from the beginning, or at least the beginning for me. Probably unlike most of you listening to this podcast, I've been watching the NBA for a long time. Because I'm a little bit older than most of you. I started watching the NBA in 1980, right? I want to say that was Magic Johnson's rookie year. And the NBA, has evolved into this, global game, and, it's, tremendously marketed. The players make hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's a great thing, and it's a great vehicle. And I've seen it grow and blossom into something, very beautiful. But it really wasn't that pretty in 1980. I remember watching games on tape delay. And it's funny because I was explaining this to my sons. I said, well, yeah, some of the games were on tape delay. And, of course, them being teenagers, they said, well, hey, Dad, what does tape delay mean? I said, it means that the game was played at 3 o'clock and it probably finished about 5 o'clock. And if you watched your 6 o'clock evening news, or at least the sports section of the news, you could find out the score, watch the highlight, but the game probably wasn't going to be televised until 10 o'clock that night. That is tape delay. And so naturally their response was, well, why would you watch it if you already knew what the score was? I was like, because, there was no TNT, game of the night or what have you. There was no NBA League Pass. It was so different. But again, this was the 80s. So, we were just moving into the advent of cable TV and the whole nine. But, the NBA wasn't in the best of shape. I mean, and it's widely known that, I don't want to say half, I'll say a majority, a huge segment of the players, were on cocaine and alcohol. I mean, so the league was, was sniffed out, and, half of them weren't, I don't want to say half, let's say a third. Right. So, the league was in bad shape. And when people say that, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird saved the NBA, they really did. So I come from a different perspective. So I've watched this game grow. And, a lot of talk has been here recently about, super teams. And, I'm not going to get too deep into the whole super team thing, because I did do a podcast on super teams and how they didn't just start 5 years ago. So when you finish listening to this podcast, you can go back and check out that super team podcast as well. But, in the past, obviously you had teams, and I'll give you an example, right? Let's take it back to the 80s. The LA Lakers, they weren't constructed as you might think as a super team. But, when you look up and down that roster and you see all of those Hall of Fame players, they really were a super team. So were the Boston Celtics. The Lakers, they came out of the West, I want to say, 9 of the 10 years of the 80s. In fact, between Boston and LA, those two teams won titles every year of the 80s, with the exception of 82 when the 76ers won. So, their dominance and their reign over the 80s was imminent. I mean, you couldn't stop either team. And that's not to say that there weren't any other great teams in those eras, but I'm giving you that in context as to where the NBA was. So the idea that they weren't super teams, there were super teams. You just didn't call them super teams, and they weren't, guys leaving other teams to play with each other. But I'll get to that in just a second. But I want to kind of at least move away from the notion of, the super team, because there were teams that had multiple Hall of Famers on it, and they played together and they won titles. So that happened, right? Because there's a narrative now that these super teams are killing the NBA. And, I don't really have a good answer for if they are or they aren't. Then you fast forward to today. At the time of this recording, the Golden State Warrior reign is happening. They've been in they've won 3 of the last 4 titles. And this is a team that is kind of funny when I think about it, because most of my life, the Golden State Warriors sucked. They were awful. So, if you root for a team right now that's awful, who knows, 10, 15, 20 years from now, maybe your team could be dope. But I said that in saying this, the last time the Warriors weren't relevant was the same year that Donald Sterling lost his team. It's been that long, right? So, the Warriors are reigning right now, and they will reign for a while, I guess. At least it appears that they will. Of course, the games still have to be played. But I think when you think of super teams, again, people tend to think, okay, well, these teams, or the level of competition is just being destroyed, and, it's not what it used to be. This is true, because this ain't your daddy's NBA. It's just not. It's a lot of differences between what was back in the day and what is right now. And while I hate to sound like the old guy in the room, even though I am the old guy in the room, it's almost like night and day, to be honest. Case in point, when you think about it, you have a generation of players now who openly campaign and recruit each other to play together. That just didn't happen back in the day. And I'll give you an example. Contrary to what people might say nowadays, trust me, as someone who watched basketball in the 80s, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird hated each other. I mean, they really hated each other. And, Boston fans hated LA fans. LA fans hated Boston fans. Fans of other teams hated both LA and Boston. So while free agency wasn't what it is now, and you can make the case that Bird and Magic never had the free agency where they could have played together. They would have never played together. And it's more so, it's the mindset. You didn't want to get, and I remember Magic saying this in an interview, when he was approached, and this was later in his career, when he was approached by Converse. Magic and Bird both wore Converses, and Converse had this idea to shoot a commercial, and the commercial was going to be filmed on Larry Bird's property. And Magic said he was very apprehensive about shooting a commercial because he knew that he would have to spend some time with Larry Bird. And in spending time with Larry Bird, he felt like Bird could possibly get into his head or maybe expose or see something that he didn't want Bird to see. See, back then it was all about, edges and angles. You didn't want somebody to have any type of edge on you or some type of angle. You didn't want to show any type of weakness. That was just how cats were. So Bird and Magic, no, they hated each other. And they ended up doing the commercial, and Magic said that, they were filming a commercial, and then he was in his trailer, Bird was in his trailer, and what happened was that when they took a break or something, Bird's mother had cooked some food, and so they had to come in the house and eat the food. And when they came in the house and ate the food, they had to sit down together and talk. And from that point on, they talked about basketball, they talked about life, and they found that they had a lot more in common. But these men genuinely, I'm pretty sure they respected each other, but they just really didn't like each other. There was no buddy type stuff. And that's how it was back then. I remember even in the 90s, Michael Jordan, he was accused by the great Jeff Van Gundy, who was then the coach of the New York Knicks, the Bulls' arch rival. Jeff Van Gundy called Michael Jordan a con man. And the reason why he said that was because he felt like Jordan would, speak to players and talk to them, maybe go out to dinner or drinks or something, like basically get on the opponent's good side. And then he would go, try to beat him the next day. See, that's the thing about Jordan. And that's the thing about Magic and Bird and Isaiah and players from that era. They would take your heart out. I mean, like, they literally would pull your heart out of your chest, throw it on the ground and step on it. Much was made about the friendship and the relationship that Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas had. And I remember in the finals, even though they did the little kiss thing before the game, Isaiah's first trip to the hole, Magic elbowed him in the face. He would have gotten thrown in 2018. He would have gotten thrown out of the game. But, I don't even think he got a call for a foul. That's how the game was. So, again, Van Gundy calls Jordan a con man, and Jordan subsequently goes out and blisters the Knicks the next day. Because all he needed was just, he didn't need any motivation, but Van Gundy gave him that much more motivation just to destroy and kill the Knicks. And to this day, Knicks fans still hate Jordan because Jordan would just do it to their team every time. And so the idea of being cool, Jordan was cool with guys, but even Jordan's friends will tell you that he's an asshole. And he would do anything and everything to rub it in your face after he beat you. And now Jordan and Charles Barkley aren't close to this day, but when they were close, they were very close. But Jordan constantly reminds Barkley that he beat his ass and he won a ring. The year that Jordan beat Barkley in the finals, Barkley won the league MVP. Jordan won his third title. So even when guys were friends, if you will, the level of competition didn't fall off. So you fast forward to today's players. And, one of the things that I was telling Keon was on Twitter was that, I don't understand the mindset. I think we get a chance. When I say we, I mean us basketball fans. We get a chance to see some great players on a night-to-night basis. I mean, if you don't even have to have league pass. You can find a game with 2 or 3 very good players to watch each night, just on regular cable, if you will. So when you have that type of stuff going on, I think it's a situation where the NBA has set it up to where you get to see that, and that's not something that we saw in years past, right? So having said that, the mindset of the players, it's changed. It's really changed. And again, I don't understand it, and maybe it's not meant for me to understand. It's just a different NBA. Again, it's not your daddy's NBA. It's not like how it used to be. These players like each other now. They go on trips together. They hang out together. And we're finding out more and more that these players openly campaign and recruit each other to come play with each other. Case in point, a few years ago, Draymond Green openly recruiting Kevin Durant to come play with the Warriors. The thought of that still is mind-boggling to me. And while, I don't begrudge Kevin Durant that much because it was his decision, he has to live with that. But Kevin Durant was on a team that had the Golden State Warriors down 3-1. He had them down 3-1, and the Warriors come back and they beat him. And then you're going to join them? Okay. I mean, just in a level of, and I'm not questioning Kevin Durant's heart, but I mean, in the 80s, people would look at you funny because they would think, well, damn, did we blow this lead while you were contemplating thinking about playing with these guys? So there's that. And I just think you have to understand the mindset. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I don't understand the mindset. Maybe I'm too old to understand the mindset. It's just weird to me. But yeah, openly recruiting guys. I mean, same for LeBron and D Wade, campaigning, and Chris Bosh, and the 3 of them end up in Miami, and it's, I don't know. That's mind-boggling to me. It's like, I know football is a different sport, but that's like me playing linebacker and you're a running back and I blast you as you go out of bounds and I knock you out of bounds and you're on the ground. I'm not helping you up. I put you on the ground for a reason. We can be sportsmen after the game, dap up and go our separate ways. But even in the NFL, you see guys shaking hands and smiling and taking pictures and signing each other's jersey minutes after the game ends. Different mindset, man. That would have never went down in the 80s and 90s. And it's not to dump on this generation, but I think there's something to be said about it, and I'm just surprised that people are so cool with being cool. Everybody wants to be cool. And it looks, from the outside looking in, it looks like the spirit of competitiveness has waned to some degree, but again, sometimes if you give a guy $10 million before he ever proves himself, does he have the motivation to be the best? Does he want to be an all-star? Does he want to bring a championship to the team that he plays for? Or does he just want to get paid? Does he want to be a legend at the bank? We all want to be legends at the bank. You know, there's a lot of guys that are legends at the bank, but they'll never be legends on the court or the field. So I don't know. That the idea of, you know, just like I said, openly campaign. I mean, when I say openly campaigning, I mean we're getting, you know, rumors and innuendos about guys openly saying, hey, let's come play together. Or, hey, I wouldn't mind playing with these guys. You know, to me, I would think if it's almost like, how can I put this? When I was younger, back in the day, as a kid, we used to play this game called King of the Hill, right? And I know it sounds crazy, but, you know, you stand on top of the hill and somebody's got to knock you off the hill. Well, if Golden State is the king of the hill, shouldn't everybody be trying to knock them off the hill? I mean, I don't know. I thought that was the name of the game, but I don't know. It seems to me like it's about, okay, well, hey, well, if this guy goes here, I might go here. If LeBron goes here, I'm going to go here. And, you know, Golden State, they've been seemingly one step ahead of everybody. You know, Golden State, to their credit, you know, 3 of their superstars they drafted. They drafted Curry. They drafted Draymond Green. They drafted Klay Thompson. You know, and then they brought Kevin Durant in. And now they're bringing in another all-star, Boogie Cousins. So they literally have 5 all-stars on a team. Even though Boogie's coming off an injury, at some point they will line up 5 all-stars. So, you know, that's crazy in and of itself. But again, and Golden State, I'm not mad at Golden State for signing Boogie Cousins. I'm mad at the teams that didn't sign Boogie Cousins because from what we're hearing, you know, nobody offered him any contract, including my favorite team, the Atlanta Hawks. We should have took a flyer on him. We could have used him, you know. But, you know, be mad at the other teams. I'm not mad at the Warriors for conducting business. But one thing I do know is that, you know, dynasties end at some point. The Lakers run ended. The Celtics run ended. The Kobe Shaq Lakers run ended. You know, the Heat ended. It looks like LeBron's run is about to end. I mean, that remains to be seen, but so it happens, right? But it's just a different era. And is it good for basketball? It depends on who you ask. I've heard a lot of people say, and I even jokingly said, because let me go back. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe about a week and a half ago or so, we heard that, and it was just a rumor, allegedly, but I don't think it was just a rumor just to get out there, that LeBron James, who was a free agent, had contacted Kevin Durant about joining him in LA. Now, I mean, if that's true, you know, LeBron's probably a lot crazier than I thought he was, because Kevin Durant has no reason to leave where he is now to go. I mean, he just beat LeBron the last 2 years. Just smoked him just about a month or so ago. Why would I go play with you when I can stay over here and continue to beat you? Duh. That doesn't make any sense, right? So, but that's the idea of it, though. Hey, you just beat me. You just swept my team. But hey, we're cool. Let's go over here and join forces and play together. Come on, man. Again, it's a different NBA. It's not your daddy's NBA. It would have never happened in your daddy's NBA. Because in your daddy's NBA, LeBron would have been like, yo, screw you, KD. I'm coming for you next year. I'm going to bust your ass. That's what he would have said. But, you know, and in your daddy's NBA, if LeBron would have made that phone call, Kevin Durant would have never taken the phone call. What you calling me for? I just bust your ass. I ain't playing with you. Get your weight up. That's all that would have been said. But it's a different era. You know, does it kill the level of competition and the spirit of competition? I don't know. I don't think that it does, because I think guys are genuinely competing. I think teams are genuinely competing, you know, and I hear fans now. And again, going back to what I said, I jokingly said if LeBron had joined the Warriors, I wouldn't watch another basketball game. But the reality is that, you know, even with this loaded team that the Warriors have, you know, I heard a lot of people say, oh, well, there's no reason to watch the NBA. You'll watch. You know why? Because you will. That's why. You say that now, but you'll watch. You know why? Because it'll be on. And for as much crap as people gave the Warriors, and they were talking about they didn't want to see a Cavs versus Warriors finals, ratings were up all across the board. The only game that was down was game 4, and I guess because it was pretty much foregone conclusion. We knew the brooms were coming out, but the ratings were up all throughout the playoffs. So, you know, does it kill the competition? I don't think so. But I've reserved the fact and just kind of come to the idea that it's just a different era. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it wrong. It's just different. Ultimately, you know, will it affect the NBA fan base? Possibly. It really remains to be seen. Time will tell. But I know one thing. End of October, the beginning of November, the NBA season will start. The end of April, early May, the playoffs will start. Most basketball fans will be there. This ain't your daddy's NBA, but ultimately you're gonna watch. You've been watching thus far. You hadn't stopped, and the game has clearly changed, and yet we're still here. We're still here as fans. So, what does that say? Does that say more about the game, or does it say more about us? Like I said, it's just not your daddy's NBA. And ultimately, like it or not, we got to get used to it. That's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.